So up next, we are going to be having a really fascinating panel on connecting business and industry with the Internet of Things. Our panelists will be coming out shortly. We may be very briefly too short. I think 2 people are running a little bit late, so they may be joining us in the interim. So we're just getting together. And maybe if we could welcome our panelists once we get the stage set up. And so I'll just start off a little bit about what our panel is going to be. My name is Stephen Cass. I am a senior editor with IEEE Spectrum in New York, which is the flagship magazine of the world's largest technology association. And when we have been talking about the Internet of Things, many times we talk about consumer devices, the smart fridge or smart car, or we talk in terms of very big things like cities. Oh, well, cities will be able to monitor pollution, all kinds of things. But there's a huge area which we haven't really talked about very much in the press, and which is why I'm so excited to be here, which is to talk very much about the use of Internet of Things in making businesses better, in making manufacturing better, in making industry better. So with that, if they're available, I would like to welcome up our panelists. Gentlemen, if you could join us.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask them all to introduce themselves and give an example. Oh. So I think Dr. Tanja Rueckert will be joining us a little bit later. I think she's just running late, so if she comes in from the stage, we're not being invaded. It's an actual guest. So I guess what I would like to do is ask each of you to introduce yourselves in turn, and then give me one concrete example of how the Internet of Things has helped a business or an industry. And I know many of you have many examples, so it might be a little difficult. But if we could start with you, Richard, and you could introduce yourself and give an example.
I can do that, absolutely. I'm Richard Soley. I'm the chairman and CEO of the Object Management Group, and more to the point on this panel, the executive director of the Industrial Internet Consortium. If you missed the opening of today's program, I gave an overview of the Industrial Internet Consortium. We are a group of about 253 organizations, companies, open source organizations, standards organizations, government agencies, building test beds, not immediately developing standards, but instead figuring out how IoT has impacted industrial systems in manufacturing, healthcare, transportation, life sciences, and many other vertical markets. And we're already seeing success in many of those vertical markets today, using Internet of Things today. Although it's obviously a very hyped technology, it's something that really works. As I mentioned this morning, I'll just mention again, I have a friend who runs a dairy farm in northwestern Costa Rica in the province of Heredia, who with the same cows and on the same terrain, turns out 40% more milk per cow than his neighbors. And he does it by monitoring those cows. He keeps track of their health. He keeps track of whether they're pregnant or whether they've just delivered on a minute-by-minute basis and differentially feeds them. So when they walk into the milking stall, they're fed based on which cow it is and the minute-to-minute health of that cow. And as I said, 40% more milk today. This is something he's working today. So it's not a future technology. It's something that can be applied today.
Great. Lumir?
Yes, my name is Lumir Boureanu. I'm a managing director of Eurodata Tech. Eurodata is a German company headquartered in Saarbrücken. Founded 1965, so not startup, not really, but we bring our experience from DevOps, cloud computing, and other enabler for smart services, how we call it. Maybe one example, in the meantime we have many, that's nice, because IoT is here right now. And maybe the last one is IoT in field of filling stations, you know it. And it started like with damages, because damages, we have 14,000 filling stations in Germany, and we have 4,000 damages per year in Germany. So you can imagine for BPM it's too slow, so too small. And what we did it event-based with IoT. We have sensors in the filling pumps. and we collect the data. And the nice thing is that already now we have more efficiency and so on, but we are at the beginning because now we have an ecosystem, now we have a data. Over the years we collect the data and then we can use the algorithms for predictive maintenance, for other things you already know from the IoT world. So that's the nice on IoT. You are starting and you have a data and you can use it again and again. And it's something that's important, especially in Germany and Europe. You cannot copy something like this. You need the time to get the data. So that's maybe also a competitive advantage.
Heiko?
Yes, and data is a good topic. So my name is Heiko Wächtersbach. Good morning. I am a member of the board of EMC in Germany. I'm responsible for all services that we are delivering in Germany from EMC. So EMC is known as a data company, so we are managing and market leader in storage. So now the question is, what has storage to do with IoT? I think a lot, because EMC is not only providing the storage, and we need to have data lakes to also analyze the data. However, we are approaching also other markets, helping our customers on the way to the transformation from technology to IT transformation, but also coming to digitalization. And at the end of the day, it's a business transformation. Yeah, and this is what we are helping our customers. We are supporting them. We are consulting them on that way. Specific example, and I think we are talking also about industry and what is the benefit for the industry of IoT. We are working closely with General Electric, for example, in the aviation part, to analyze their engines. So all what is mentioned on humidity, on pressure, temperature, what is very important, because we can shrink down the maintenance cycles and saving money at the end of the day, to giving the chance to invest, adding new use cases. What might be, for example, that we are changing the business model for. Yeah? So why do a carrier buy an engine? Why not having a service, engine as a service? Yeah? So different models, business models that can be applied out of the technology and out of the opportunities that we are having with IoT today.
Great, thank you. So Peter, do you want to jump in here?
Yes, thank you. Welcome. So thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to be here with these big experts from big companies. I have the honor of heading a small company called abat. After 12 years with SAP, I had the honor to found my own company with some friends. We are a little bit more down to earth compared to some of the cloud guys here. We are in production, shop floor, and we believe that the Internet of Things is an interesting opportunity for our clients, for our customers, even for the consumers. We're managing shop floor environments. For example, in the automotive industry, Mercedes-Benz is one of our big clients. So we help them for creating a smart factory to be more intelligent in production. And we built the link, what we call the vertical integration from the ERP system down to the different shops, if this is a body shop for Mercedes or paint shop or the assembly, down to the after-sales area. And from our opinion, it is our vision that we start in the area of production, collecting all relevant data, what is in interaction with the product, to make the Mercedes-Benz, for us as a consumer, as a driver, much more smart for using the vehicle.
Terrific. So I guess that the first question I'd like to kick off with is, what do you think are the most important technological enablers for the rise of the Internet of Things? Does anyone want to jump in there? I know, Richard, you've got some thoughts.
I've always got thoughts. That's my problem. The obvious connections are to things like cloud computing. And here in Germany especially, you hear quite a lot about 5G as a connection mechanism. But in fact, lots of industrial internet solutions are going to be wired, I'm sorry, inside factory where you have RF interference like crazy, and where the devices are not moving, it makes sense to wire them. But I think the single most important technology, is real-time predictive analytics. Having real-time predictive analytics means you can know more about your supply chain, know more about where your assets are, know more about how your assets are performing. And the fact that you can now rent computing time from the likes of IBM or Amazon or Salesforce or Google or whomever means that you can do as much predictive real-time analytics as you can afford in real time and without having to own the computing infrastructure.
Completely agree with what Richard said, because collecting data is nothing new. Yeah? So since ages we are collecting data, but today we are able to really analyze them in real time. And I think this is the major changing point today, that we are really able to ingest the data and analyze the data and work with them in real time.
So this real-time aspect is very important. You were explaining, Peter, behind how, when you're working with Mercedes and they're making cars and they're making 60 cars an hour, that even a minute can be problems. So how has this predictive technology helped you deal with some of those problems?
Yeah, as I tried to explain in my opening words, we believe that it is very critical. An ERP system is important to collect the information about the customer and about the order. But when you go down into a plant, and we had the chance talking about this behind the stage, and you're referring to a Mercedes-Benz plant. In Stuttgart, they produce around 2,000 cars a day, and everybody knows that a Mercedes is a real expensive and a real good car. So this means we are really in real time. So when this system is down and this environment is down by a second, so it costs money. And not only money for the production, not only money for the car, what they are losing in production. This means also that the customers are a little bit unhappy when they are not getting the car when it is predicted and announced that you are getting the car. So for us, it's very important to have a complete vertical integration from beginning of the production down when we hand over the car to the sales. And you are talking about big data and predictive business, predictive maintenance. This is important for us. So we collect all interactions between the vehicle and the body and the workers. And also, when you go into some modern plants, we have hundreds of robots doing the interaction with the product. And this is also very important information about the product. So we collect them, put this in a database, and then we can exactly do this with predictive maintenance and as a platform for predictive business.
Terrific.
Yeah, I fully agree, because I think it's a convergence of more technologies what we have today. It's a connectivity, it's a cloud computing, you name it, cyber-physical systems, because we have a people still there. The last instance is a human. And the systems can really help to the people, especially with some activities. And what we generate are a lot of data. Big data, and we have really the challenge to take some decisions in the real time, and we have still more and more data. And if we take a look what data we really analyze, we really use, it's not much in the practice. So what we try, and I think it's important for IoT, we can decentralize the processes. So we don't have the systems like ERP today, and from ERP goes everything into production. If we are talking about materials and some products, they are talking with the machines and say, I need this act, and so on, then it's decentralized. And that's nice, because then you can split this load, this data, to more instances, and they can decide for each other. Yeah, so I think it's a convergence of many technologies.
Fascinating. So we've talked a little bit about the promise of the technology, but now I want to ask, what are the biggest challenges to greater adoption? What are the roadblocks that you see coming up? So,
I think one of the biggest challenges, I think that is of course, and that's the uncertainty, and also that where people are not quite sure is that the right time stepping in is of course security, in my point of view, because it's still, of course, we need to know who is owning the data, what data we are talking about, who is able to see the data, and what are we really doing to secure it. And I think that is one of the major challenges I see if we're talking about IoT.
Well, in fact, what underlies every problem is the cost of change, right? People don't like change because change is difficult, and that's why so many people make money as transformation experts, because change is hard. We like to do things the way we do things because that's the way we do things. So there are technical reasons, such as data sovereignty, what you mentioned. There are technical reasons like infrastructure changes and costs and so forth. But I think the most important changes are the changes to business models, because changes to business models are really hard to implement. It means you have to retrain people. It means you have to change procedures, and these are very difficult and expensive things to do. I talked this morning about the change of selling jet engines to instead renting jet engines, leasing jet engines. Well, obviously there are some technical aspects to connecting the jet engines to my real-time predictive analytics engine, But there are also enormous changes to just the way I account for that, whether I'm selling engines and now I'm leasing them, so my capital sales have turned into operating leases, or whether I'm no longer buying engines and I'm instead leasing them, which means that I've got an operating lease on that end, and I have to report differently to my stockholders and my shareholders, and they're not going to like the initial changeover in the first year or two. So yeah, I agree, it's disruptions in general, and some of those are business process change problems.
I think the special challenge is really the business model. Why? Because the companies cannot start from the beginning, from scratch. They have already some old world, and now they have maybe good ideas, disruptive ideas. They would like to do new business processes. They have IoT. They know exactly how customers use the product. They can use this data for design of the product and so on. But you have two worlds. You have the old machines. They are living like 20, 30 years. It's not exception. And you can imagine 20 years in IT. It's like 2 generations or maybe more. So we have to come together with the digitization and with the hardware. Today is every machinery is somehow IT, so it comes together. It's really a challenge.
Yeah.
And you, Peter?
Yeah, from my perspective, it's an interesting discussion from the point of view for processes and for the interaction, yes. But we have to go one step ahead about this, I believe. So it is what we call business versus IT transformation. And we are IT guys supporting the business. And there is no process when you go to a big company which is running without any IT. You can even not order the toilet paper in a company. Therefore we have to come much closer together, the business people and the IT people, and therefore we need sometimes a transformation, what I call the business versus IT transformation, where we have to have the right knowledge, the right people talking to each other. And on the other side, we need very flexible IT systems, what you're referring to. IT is the big trend, standardization, but I believe that it is not possible to standardize processes around the globe. But it's possible to standardize functions around the globe. Therefore, we have to have a new approach in the IT, not talking about a standard process. In China, when we support a production for a Mercedes car, the production, end of the day, is the same as a Mercedes car. But on the other hand, we have much more people in the plant, less robots. But we need the same quality, we need the same car. And therefore, we have to interact much smarter with the workers and with the machinery. Therefore, we need a very smart and intelligent IT infrastructure.
But don't you think actually standardization of process, even within one company, forget one country, just one company, it obviously gives you value because you have repeatability of process, and you have, when people change, you can continue to operate that process, but it makes change more difficult because now you've got processes that have standardized and they're very difficult to change because you have to change the standard. It has a flip side, all of these.
Yeah, and you're right. We have to change processes sometimes within a second, sometimes during production. So when the worker is doing with one car, interacting with one car, the next car, we have a different supplier, we have a different product, part for the product. So sometimes within a second, we have to change the process.
But this is very important, as you said. So at least in the past, but even today, IT and business is not really talking and working together. So this is a major change that we need to bring in changing the entire organization and business model and process model, because IT need to understand what the business is expecting and vice versa. And therefore, it's really important that the teams are working together. Saying that DevOps is a hot topic on the market as well, because this is exactly where we need to bring it together and see what is the value worth of the other.
Terrific. So one of the points that you actually raised there, I'd like to revisit in some more detail, which is some of the security issues. So some people worry about having many connected devices presents what security specialists call it a large attack surface. There are so many places, and part of the problem is because when people have had small embedded devices, the overhead of adding good security has been sometimes seen as prohibitive. So many of these, because you're only making a little thing, but then it gets multiplied out. And some people then worry about the privacy implications of having so many monitoring devices. So how would you reassure these people, and how can security be improved? Oh, and I'd like to welcome Tanja Rueckert. Thank you very much for joining us. And we'll just come back to you maybe just after we finish this question. Thank you.
I think if we're talking about security, that can be a evening full of talks on what we can do, and I think we need to put it, of course, on not every piece of the complete chain that we need to see what can we do, and we're working as well in the IIC to develop standards here and see how we can do it. But on the most important side is that we need to understand that security is not only prevention. Yeah, so because we are doing things, we have firewalls in the companies, we have whatever. However, every company is going to hack. Also, we have prevention. Yeah.
There are two fallacies, actually, in what you said, Stephen, that I think is worth bringing up, or implied. I know you didn't mean them. One is the idea that we can control the attack surface. The attack surface is everywhere. It's inside. Perimeter security doesn't work, and that's what you were implying. We know that we have to be able to respond to security problems from inside, because that's where 80% of attacks start. So the attack surface is almost irrelevant. It's dealing with the attack once it happens. The other fallacy is, I hear it all the time, unfortunately, is our industrial systems may use internet technology, but they won't be connected to the internet. Sorry, that's not true. Every system that uses internet technology is eventually connected to the internet, including Intellink, the US intelligence secure system, which is internet-based and not connected to the internet. It gets connected about once a day by accident. So the reality is we have to think through those security issues, and as you mentioned, the IIC has a security framework group which is looking at not only how we define the use cases for security, but how we attack those test beds that we're building so that we know whether they're secure, because we're going to fail, and failure is an absolutely necessary requirement for success. And that's how we're going to find the problems and make sure that we fix them before it rolls out in real life.
Maybe I just add.
Yes, please.
So I think the security framework in IIC is one of the big cornerstones of the topics we run in IIC. SAP is part of the steering committee and part of the IIC overall, as well as Platform Industry 4.0. One word about security. Our customers and all companies are not expecting security at the edge or security at the platform. They expect for Internet of Things end-to-end security. We are running mission-critical processes. It's not something which we do in the cloud, some commodity only, but I think it's really mission-critical end-to-end security. And no vendor can provide it on its own. So it's very important to partner here to drive the ecosystem and provide an overall framework, while every company, like we do as SAP as well, has dedicated teams, if they can afford it, to focus on the cybersecurity framework for Internet of Things solutions.
Yeah, I think it's important that our customers, they are aware that there is no absolute security. Yeah. We hear it, we can see it every day, almost every day on the TV. But what we try to tell our customers is a sort of security per design. So we don't have to challenge the security if we don't have to for the process and so on. So the question is also, the most of attacks goes from inside. It's really important to imagine, because we try to close the doors, you know, but you are also already inside. And the question is, how can I see these attacks? How can I recognize these anomalies I have in the system? Because the react time is the important thing. That you are hacked is something, but you have to react really fast. Recognize this.
I think the single most important thing to realize about security is no matter how bad it is, we're going to do it.
Yeah. That's security
So we
analytics.
get it done right.
Security analytics is one part that is able. We talked about big data and data analytics, and this you can do with security as well. And this is very important to getting to a stage where you are having it end to end. But it just because it doesn't matter, it doesn't really help if you just secure one piece, but the other is open. Yeah? So it needs to be end to end.
Yeah.
So do you have, as I say, you're very much working with manufacturing. Do you have to also worry about physical security when how do you design physical security into some of your systems, as well as cyber security?
Yeah, you know, in production and critical production, we have to respect as much as we can about security about the data that it cannot be hacked going into a robot and to manipulate this. Yeah, so they are physical, they are cyber physical within a system. There are many security mechanisms what we have to realize for our customers. But let me add one word about security. And ownership of data. A very smart device is, by the way, a car. You know that a modern car can generate per day around 17 gigs of data. And many customers are asking us, who's owning this data? Yeah, and this is one of the key challenges what we are facing in the Internet of Things idea and strategy. Who is owning the data and what can we take out of the data? from my opinion, we should see this as a big chance for our customers and for customers of our customers that we can offer them new services. You know, when the car is going down, the car knows everything about himself, that he needs some inspection, some new technology, some updates. The car, I will give the car the allowance talking to the vendor. Why not? Because then they can sell me some new technology, some new services, that they can sell me, end of the day, mobility, and my car is not in the garage for a couple of days. So I see that from a positive aspect to say chances. Yeah. And this is what we have to educate our customers and talk to our customers, that there are a lot of potential behind the data, that they are not afraid that we misinterpret this information.
So I'd like to just pause and welcome Tanja Rueckert to our panel. And perhaps if you could introduce yourself and then just very briefly give one concrete example that you have about how IoT has helped business.
So, Tanja Rueckert, I'm part of SAP's senior leadership team, and I am responsible for Internet of Things, Industry 4.0, and customer innovation solutions. One brief example, and we could choose of efficiency-led examples or new business models or additional services. I have chosen one around efficiency. So we work with Trenitalia. It's a primary train operator in Italy. They have more than 2,000 locomotives. And they so far did maintenance like we do for our cars. So it's every second year, it depends on the number of kilometers, and they have a maintenance spend of 1.3 billion a year. So a lot of money. And I think it's easy to calculate kilometers and time, but it also is very conservative and a lot of buffer is in there. So what we now did, we put a lot of sensors on the trains. We can measure how often a door opens and closes. We understand if the train stops every 55 kilometers or 50 kilometers, and then get really physical measurements and drive better business decisions. And what Trenitalia is doing, they are moving from this planned maintenance to true predictive maintenance, and they plan to save 10% of 1.3 billion. You can imagine what this means, also for us as consumer or passenger, because it means no unexpected delay, and for them it means a lot of money. To close, we already have implemented the first phase, and for several components of their train, they even came to much higher savings from a percentage-wise, and they already start to adjust the policy of maintenance.
Fantastic. So, I do want to talk a little bit about, we're looking at these kind of model, and it's a little bit about what you were saying about giving customers their data, and you were talking about companies leasing products. Is this going to be, currently and today, if I sell you something, there are very clear divisions. In some cases in America, there are things like this doctor for sale when it comes to certain things like bucks and so on. There are very clear divisions. If we're getting to a point where everybody down the chain has an interest in the final product, how are we going to manage these chains? And is there a danger then that, as I say, if we move to a leasing environment, that people will not want to send information up the chain, or if we, in a leasing environment, people don't feel they won't own anything, so maybe they won't be free to innovate in the way that they are now? Because now, if I have a car, I can take it apart. I don't have to worry what the car manufacturer thinks about what I'm doing. But increasingly, now that there's all these computers in the car, it gets harder and harder to do that. So can you talk a little bit about some of those impacts?
Sure. I mean, the reality is leasing is not a particularly new idea. I mean, I was talking about jet engine leasing this morning, as you know. But in the airline business, most airlines don't own their aircraft anymore. They have better uses for that capital. So even if they do buy the aircraft, they're typically going to sell them to a leasing company and lease them right back. So this is not a really new idea for how to best use your capital. And I think we can claim that those companies, those airlines, are still innovating with their technology. The most obvious example is Wi-Fi on board. Every airline that hasn't already put Wi-Fi on board is doing that, even on their leased aircraft. Of course, it means they have to deal with their lessor, but that can be done. So I don't think it's going to have any negative effect on innovation. It's going to have very positive effect on innovation, in fact, because since you'll have more capital available at the level of the lessee, they're going to be able to try more things. It means we're going to have more flexible operating lease terms, sure. But that's happened many times over the years. The first aircraft lease was written by a guy named Udvarhazy Istvan, now called Steve Udvarhazy, and that's like 45, 50 years ago today. And the way aircraft are operated by airlines has changed completely in those 40 or 50 years. The selection of leasing companies has changed completely. I think we're going to see that happen in every, not just heavy industry, but light industries as well.
And maybe just to add, because Richard made a perfect point, but I believe the innovation speed will rather accelerate, because a highly modified or customized physical or software products are then often, it's hard to upgrade, it's hard to maintain, and so on. So I believe the innovation speed will accelerate with leasing products.
And we should not be scared. Yeah, because what we see, and that was a learning that we had in EMC as well. So first of all, we are developing a lot of software as SAP is doing as well. And we said, no, it's all ours. So we're not sharing the source code. And we figured out that this is not good enough anymore. Yeah, so we need the community. Yeah, we need the feedback. We need the community to develop our products further. Yeah, and I think doing a ring fence is not good. So we need to be open. Of course, there's some weaknesses that are coming along, yeah, but we need to tackle them. But we should not go and ring fence. So we need to be open. Open source is something that is really important.
I think it's the platform strategy in general.
Exactly.
Right?
So I guess I'd like to ask now is, how are governments, because we come from a spectrum of jurisdictions here, how are governments helping or hindering the development of IoT for industry? Are they encouraging it? Are they putting, or is it just something that's purely happening? Because I know, in Germany there are attempts, and China is developing sort of advanced second-generation advanced manufacturing. Is that translating into any kind of support?
Every government is doing something to accelerate the adoption of Internet of Things. Here in Germany, of course, it's what we were talking about earlier, Platform Industry 4.0. In China, you have the China 2020-25 project. In India, you have a nationwide series of centers of excellence. The Chilean government is developing a nationwide series of centers of excellence in agriculture, aquaculture, environmental biodiversity, and so forth. In Japan, in Spain, in Europe as a whole, the European Commission, the AIoTI. So that's happening. I think the ones that are going to be the most successful are the ones that realize that closed garden that you were talking about, it doesn't make any sense, and they need to be working in a much more international way with other organizations. And I think the person who said it best was actually Staatssekretär Matthias Machnig from the Ministry of Economics and Energy here in Germany. I was with him at an event a few months ago in which he said, "We don't want German standards." Hush from the crowd. It was in Frankfurt. He said, "We also don't want American standards. We want international standards, because those are the opportunities for German companies." I've just come from talking to executives at another infrastructure manufacturer based in China, and they said exactly the same thing. We want world standards. So that's the opportunity. Walled gardens are getting us nowhere when the whole point of the technology is to integrate across the supply chain. So government functions should be helping to accelerate that change, and as I said, many governments are doing that. They should be looking for relationships with other governments, Industrie du Futur in France, Industry Value Chain Initiative in Japan, and so forth. And they should be preparing their people for the disruptions that are coming, as I was talking about this morning.
And I think this is important, because on top of standards, I would see 5 points governments could help us to drive Internet of Things. Number 1 is education and skills. We will need different skilled people, and it means schools, university, and so on. Number 2 is startup scene. We should have some more investment. I don't want to say Berlin should be Silicon Valley of Germany or something like this, but we should have more investment here. Number 3 is, why can we not have investments to upgrade our machines? All Germans here know maybe the previous Abwrackprämie, where you could hand in your car, you got something back. And I think it is important, and now actually I forgot one point I will deliver later, but let me close in what I also would like the government to see is to implement. sorry, I go back. Number 4 is data privacy. We have different data privacy rules all around the world. This is critical that we come here to an agreement. And the last point is just drink the champagne, implement the solutions you have for Internet of Things, if it's for connected car, if it's in the smart city, and try it out yourself if you're a government. So this would be, and we have to do this together, industry and government, but these are points I would recommend.
And none of those are technical things. I
No,
absolutely
no.
agree. They're all policy issues.
So actually, and to that point, I'd like to take that, to amplify that point, is that when we talk about these new jobs and these manufacturing jobs, it's going to be very different, I think, than the kind of thinking we have done about jobs previously. So people are talking about bringing manufacturing back into developed countries, but of course, and I think politically it's often portrayed as this is going to be this great jobs program, but of course these jobs are going to be very, very different. And so are we really preparing people for the very different, where manufacturing is more like being a clean room surgeon than some sort of blue collar activity?
Yeah, the Internet of Things and Industry 4.0 is a very interesting door opener, as you mentioned, bringing the production back into the high-cost countries, like America, like Germany. You know that many of the production companies going away produce in China, produce in Thailand, produce in XYZ country. So this is an opportunity, but, and there's always a but, we have to buy this to educate the people, and the government can help here, and Tanja is referring to education programs. The jobs will change. In the future, we do not have anymore the typical blue-collar worker. So when you go in the plant, I'm always referring to Mercedes-Benz, so the plant is not any more dirty. Sometimes people are believing that when you go into a plant where they produce cars, it is oil and it's smelling and stinking something. No, it's not. It's clean like a hospital. So this is more controlling aspect, talking to the robots, educating the robots. So we need more high-skilled people helping the robots, because the robots doing not everything by their own. So they have to educate the people to help the robots to make the right things, to help the people to interact with the vehicle, with a smart vehicle, with smart products. So the jobs will change. It's an opportunity, but on the other side, we cannot only realize the opportunity when we help the people in the education program.
Terrific.
Maybe I would point out one point from the first day of the CeBIT. He was Mr. Oettinger, responsible for IT in Europe. And he told us here that the most important thing is the infrastructure. If we are talking about industrial internet, IoT and so on, and it's the connectivity is the crucial point. And so from European point of view, it is really important to invest in this infrastructure. Exactly the same or even more like in streets. It will be more and more important to enable new business models. And I agree, we will take some production back to our European countries or even in Germany because of these business models. If you would like to tailor some products for your customers and they can do it in internet, they wouldn't like to wait for 3 months, then I get this product from Asia or from another regions. So it's somehow necessary. You don't have the choice. If you would like to offer these tailored products for your customer, then you have to come back to your customers.
And I think additive manufacturing or 3D printing, you could say it's still a hype, but I think it's very well progressed. It goes out to many materials, and we already see logistics service provider who build up 3D printing farms at their hubs to deliver some of the spare parts. So this will disrupt the entire manufacturing, or at least a part of it.
So we're getting close to the end of our time. So one thing I would very much like to ask all of you. So, if somebody in the audience or watching is thinking, "Oh, this sounds really good. I want to do some of this." So for a company interested in engaging in IoT, sort of what's the first step? Tanja, you want to try to check this? No.
I'm happy to start. I believe it's important that you start where you see the highest value, and ideally where there's already some IT infrastructure. It can be a very small area, it can be in production, it can be in maintenance, it can be in product design, but you already should think how you connect the different value steps together. So you can start small, you should think big, and you should start now.
Peter?
Tanja saying everything is said.
No,
Everything is said. So I 100% buy this with going to a smart or becoming a smart factory, becoming a smart plant. You have to start smart, you have to react smart, you have to work smart, you have to think big. Start in a small environment. When you go down to production, for example, start with quality insurance, because quality is one of the big topics in production. Start there, and to work not with big bangs. This will not work. And I'm with you. Start now. Use the Industry 4.0 as an interesting opportunity, as a concept. Don't take it as a religion. Don't believe what everybody is saying about Industry 4.0. There's a lot of noise around this, and also to take this word and this concept very smart. And let me quote you, start now.
Heiko?
So I don't want to echo, because that is really important. However, you need to ask for help, because you're running a lot of companies running their business and are running it for centuries, ages, whatever, and do not expect that the people you're having on board today and you don't train them, that they do the change. That's not going to happen. Either you train your people and starting it by yourself, or get help from outside. And there's a lot of companies on the way, also associations, consortium stuff, that can help and support in these areas, because driving it, your business as you do it today, will not help. You're not transforming.
Yeah, I can agree. I try to add something new. No, I think there are a lot of buzzwords you heard already today. And it's one thing. Another thing is what you would like to reach. And you can imagine, if you are talking about business models, then it's definitely a decision in the C-suite. You need some sponsors for this. You cannot start like, okay, I like IoT, I would like to connect these two machines, and then I do something. Because otherwise, also predictive maintenance is the question, what is the added value for your customers? It's not only that you are efficient, more efficient, that you can save some money or invest the money somewhere else, but what I can do for my customers. And then you need the sponsoring for this, because it's a sort of cannibalism. You can imagine you do some business, it works, and now it's coming. We should change something, and we shouldn't sell the products. We should sell the output of the products. It's totally different business model. So that's maybe one point I would like to precise.
So I thank my colleagues for leaving me 3 things to say. The first is, start small but think big is an important thing. But what do we mean by that? We mean start small but do something that matters. If you choose something that doesn't matter, then the result may be positive, but it won't have any impact on the organization because of the change that you're talking about, Lumir. And that is critically important. So start small but with something that matters. That's what we mean by think big. Second, don't think that this is just a technology issue. You're going to hear in just a moment about 5G. Wonderful. It's great that we'll have higher performance, lower latencies, and higher throughput in the wireless world. But in fact, there are many applications in which we're not going to use wires. In factory floors where you have RF interference, you're going to continue with wired systems quite often. So wireless is important, but it's not everything. So don't think it's just about technology. It's also about people. And third, and I think the single most important, and I thank all of you for not mentioning it, is expect to fail. The first time you try something, it might fail. The second time you might try something, it might fail. But failure is a necessary ingredient to success. So choose something that matters, but be resilient to failure, learn from failure, and then bring in those partners that you're talking about to help you make the decisions that will make sure you succeed. There is no one that hasn't failed at least once. There are lots of people that have failed and not realized why. My favorite example are 2 guys that started a company which was a total failure. They invested a lot of money and they sold 0. Their next company was called Microsoft. So if you haven't read about the history of Bill Gates and Paul Allen, I suggest you do. Their first startup was a total failure, 0 sales. Their second startup did a little bit better.
So we literally just have a couple of minutes left on the clock, but I'd like to ask the audience if you have any questions for our panelists. Okay, one question here, yes.
Talking about IoT specifically in the auto manufacturing. Now the systems in the cars, in the automobiles, they have their own proprietary technology. And on the other hand, you have IoT and IP-related technology. What's going to be the interface between the two systems, and who's going to create that interface? And number two, the internet was not built to handle billions of connected devices. So do you think there's going to be a new kind of internet, a new kind of architecture emerging?
Do you want to take the first part of that?
Maybe I can first take the first part. You're right, the data in a car is a separate environment. I believe the infrastructure is not 100% there, and the internet is not able to handle these millions of data. I mentioned that the car is easily taking 17 gigs of data per day. From my point of view, we need computers in the car, the models for computing in the car, in the vehicle, and then send via the internet the information in an aggregated mode to systems like and I'm referring to Tanja, like an SAP HANA database, where then you have the power to do the analytics and to do the models and to use this information. Not any kind of data from the vehicle is necessary and helpful. You have to collect the right way, the right data. And I believe we need the models, the calculation models in a car, in a vehicle.
Maybe just two points to add, because I think you described it. Sometimes we believe we need all data which is generated, like also in a car. This is not true. I think we just have to decide where we do the aggregation and the filtering. Do we do it decentral or central? Yeah? And I believe from the car we might not collect it all, only selective ones. And I think then the analysis and prediction will always be done central, and the connection will be via the internet. Yeah.
Right.
I have to say, I drive an automobile, a Mexican car, made in Salinas, Mexico. It says Ford on the outside, but we know it's Mexican. It has 80 CPUs in it. Of course, in that universe, they're not called CPUs, they're called ECUs, but they are CPUs. And they're connected, as you clearly know, by networks like CAN and TTA and LIN and so forth, not internet connections. But the reason for that is not the reason you stated. You said the internet wasn't built to connect billions of devices. Sorry, but there are billions of devices connected to the internet today. So clearly that's not the case. The internet actually is quite able to handle billions of devices. The addressing issues are actually minor issues. The lack of internet thinking in operational systems, whether they're manufacturing systems or automotive systems or healthcare device integration, it's the lack of internet thinking that has kept the internet outside the interface of the car. But it really doesn't matter, because you can interface a car to the internet from the edge, right? You can continue to use TTA, CAN, and LIN inside the car and still connect to Bluetooth or Ethernet or Wi-Fi or 5G or whatever on the outside. My car does today. Tesla cars do it every second of every day. So what we should not be focusing on is the technology and the specific protocol, but exactly what Tanja was talking about. What's the information? What information do we aggregate? What information do we analyze? That's much more interesting than the physical connection of the car and the physical structure inside the car.
And with that, I'm afraid I have to bring it to a close, as I see our time is up. But I'd like to very much thank all our speakers here today for a really fascinating conversation. I certainly learned a great deal. I hope you did too. And in a moment, our following speaker will be Dr. Walter Weigel, Vice President of the European Research Institute, and he's going to be speaking on 5G and the Internet of Things. So please give a hand for our wonderful panelists today. Thank you.